Surprise! If you missed the Vesuvius leak, that is. Civ 6's second expansion has been revealed, and it's not called Vesuvius. It's called Gathering Storm. It's out on February 14th next year, and we know things about it, which we would like to convey to you now in YouTube's ever-popular list format. Let's begin. So we thought we'd start here and answer maybe your most urgent question first. Yes, the World Congress is back in a new form, and its new currency is diplomatic favour. You'll earn this in many different ways. Being suzerain of a city-state, for instance, will give you one favour per turn. So city-states do still matter, but you won't be able to buy all their votes in one go. You'll have to cultivate and maintain your relationship with them over a longer time to reap their benefits. Other sources include alliances and keeping those annoying petty promises that the AI asks you to make to not settle near them or take their stuff. You can also trade for favour in trade deals. As before, the Congress will meet for ordinary sessions at regular intervals where you can vote on motions like outlawing luxuries, starting international projects and banning trade with certain city-states, that kind of thing. Firaxis say these will be similar in type and number to Civ 5, but they'll be more flexible this time round. For example, each resolution has a flip side, so you can pass a deforestation treaty to protect the rainforest, or you can do the opposite, scrapping rainforest protections and encouraging exploitation. Drill, baby, drill! Drill, baby, drill! The emergencies system introduced in Rise and Fall has also been folded into the World Congress. Emergency events will now trigger a special session of the Congress, in which everyone will vote on whether or not to trigger the appropriate emergency. And you can spend your favour here as well to vote the motion down. So say you've got a nuke and you've got a target to drop it on. Anticipating the emergency when you do, you might save up all your favour to vote it down. Similarly to its previous incarnations, the diplomatic victory in Gathering Storm requires you to be elected everyone's BFF, actual title unconfirmed, at the World Congress. The difference this time round is you have to win several votes. The motion for World Leader unlocks in the modern era, and every time you win it, you'll win a certain number of points toward the diplomatic victory. You'll only be crowned World Leader when you pass a particular threshold, and Firaxis says it's still balancing the numbers here to ensure that all the victory types are roughly as difficult as each other. What's especially exciting about this approach, though, is that the flip side of the World Leader motion enables other civs to dock you points if you get up to any scurrilous shenanigans in the time between votes. So it's no longer a big one-and-done blowout from bribing city-states to vote for you, but might actually require sustained diplomatic engagement, even leadership, with other powers over a long period of time in the endgame. Floods, volcanoes, and a variety of different storms, including sandstorms and hurricanes, are all here to mess up your cities. They'll operate on a controlled random system under which a given river, say, will have a set number of times that it ought to flood in the average game. The likelihood of it actually flooding in a given turn will rise if it hasn't flooded enough yet, and indeed vice versa. So there's a steer towards a certain rate of disaster. Though Firaxis do also say that certain disasters will be made more likely through your own actions in aggravating the climate. More on that later. Wary of how annoying it can be when video games throw up challenges and obstacles that are outside of your control, Firaxis say they don't want to make these disasters feel too arbitrary. The UI will give you plenty of information about environmental risks, such as the chance of flooding in a particular area, and if you choose to build a city on the slopes of a volcano, you've kind of only got yourself to blame if it suddenly develops more ash than the smoking area at your local spoons. You'll also be able to mitigate the impact of some of these disasters. In Gathering Storm, you'll be able to alter the world map more directly than ever before. You can build new terrain improvements such as canals, yes, canals, as well as tunnels and dams. And some of these are available nice and early to give you a bit of protection from the elements. Dams, for example, unlock in the classical era and can mitigate the effects of flooding. Then later in the game, you can upgrade them to hydroelectric dams and use them to power your cities. Use them to power your cities, because that's a thing now. Come the industrial era, you'll be able to build a coal power plant in your industrial zones. Most of the powerful late-game buildings after this, stuff like the research lab for instance, will draw on your city's power. Interestingly, there's no actual downside to failing to supply them with power. They'll still provide positive yields, but those yields will be much weaker than they are even now, so you'll be missing out on a lot of their benefit. This should give you a nice strong incentive to keep your cities powered without slapping you with any actual negatives or minuses for failing to do so. As a result of this new power system, there's been a little tweak to strategic resources. Having access to them no longer just flatly unlocks certain units. We're heading back towards Civ 5 in the sense that a certain number of strategic resources will support a corresponding number of units, but we're actually also going to an even more granular level in that a quantity of coal and oil and similar resources will be burned per turn in your power plants. This should be interesting to play with in that it might simulate a resource rush when everyone unlocks the right tech and starts looking for new oil fields as their existing stocks run low. That's right, Gathering Storm will model the effects of climate change. Burning fossil fuels in your power plants will belch carbon into the atmosphere, which will cause it to heat up over time. Keep this up into the late game and it'll melt the ice caps and raise sea levels. The aforementioned coal power plant is the first that you get and the most polluting. If you want to minimize your carbon footprint, you need to upgrade it. An oil plant will offer a slight reduction in emissions, but by the late game there are clean, renewable power sources such as solar, wind and hydroelectric. And yes, we know, politics, keep politics out of games and all that. Well, even though I could, I'll choose not to get all preachy in this video, and Firaxis say there isn't a message here either, interestingly. Say you notice a rival has founded a lot of coastal cities, whereas you've settled inland. Maybe rising sea levels suit you. In which case, you're free to make the choice to hunt down every last fossil fuel and burn them all to hasten the climate apocalypse. To fully model the effects of climate change, Firaxis realised they needed to extend the game about 30 to 40 years into the future. Thus, the game will get a brand new era, the future era, with 9 new techs, some of which will help you counteract climate change. These include carbon recapture technology and the ability to relocate your population out to seasteads if you've given up on sea levels. Firaxis also say they've taken the opportunity to consider what could the future of governments look like and the future of military forces. They're still being coy about the details there, but one example they did give is that the tech and civics trees will randomize to some extent in the future, since we don't know how future discoveries will play out. You might notice some techs will change places from playthrough to playthrough, which should add a little bit of uncertainty as you're chasing down the last few discoveries on your way to the science victory. Firaxis claims Gathering Storm will be the largest expansion ever developed for the series, with tons of new generic stuff on top of all the above systems. That will include, and I'm reading from the press release here, 9 new leaders from 8 new civilizations. So if we're going strictly by that wording, that sort of suggests that the 8 new civs, of the 8 new civs, 1 will be the civ that gets a second leader. Which wasn't, of course, the case with Rise and Fall, where a new leader was added for India. So it remains to be seen how that'll play out. But on top of all of that, there are also 18 new universal units, where Rise and Fall, of course, added only 4. 15 new tile improvements, 9 new buildings, 5 new districts, 2 new city sets, 9 new techs, 10 new civics, 7 new world wonders and 7 new natural wonders. Well, there we go. Plenty more coming to the base game then, and note those 2 new city sets, which sort of implies that the new civs, or some of them at least, might come from completely different parts of the globe than the ones we're playing with right now. Of course, Firaxis will do the usual thing of sort of drip feeding and teasing those civs in the weeks coming. There aren't too many between now and the release on February 14th, so expect those teases to start happening real soon, or those reveals to start happening real soon. Let us know what you're excited about in the comments down below. Are you excited to melt the polar ice caps or fight to preserve the world? Thanks as always for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time. Take care.